Talk Want to talk about good old-fashioned death?
Yeah, man, let's do it. It's, pretty innocent topic, I'd say. Pretty,
Yeah, pretty regular dinner table topic,
I
the
mean,
pinnacle of suffering.
in our circles, it's not far from the truth, I feel like.
Yeah, that's right. Um,
Yeah. Now, maybe we can just start out, what is your relationship with death? Like, what does that mean for you when you hear the word death? Like, what comes up for you? Just like a very succinct kind of, what is that for you?
yeah. So, well, the first thing that comes to my mind is when my cousin Zachary, he passed from cancer when I was maybe 10 years old, and it was the first time that someone that I was close with like actually died, and that was really my first person experience of like, wow, like this person was here and now they're gone. Now they're somewhere else. And I can still remember that day like it was yesterday because, it was my first time as a kid experiencing that. And I can still remember like at the funeral, one of his best friends from growing up was just like completely sobbing, like deepest sob you could imagine. And I had like never seen anyone cry like that. Um, and it just really stuck with me. So yeah, that comes to mind as like my first real experience with death. And yeah, since then, I mean, many people that have been close to me and love have passed on. But I feel like as I've had my own near-death experiences and I've listened to hundreds of videos of other people's near-death experiences, I feel like it has diminished my fear of death and my trust has increased that like life goes on in some way or another,
Hmm.
and I don't claim to understand how the whole structure of reality and the soul's passing. Like some people are like so convinced that they know exactly what happens. And I'm like, all right, bro, like I'm guessing you just want to feel really sure of your theory, um but yeah, so from my own experiences, I do believe that somehow or another our souls go, go on to another realm and maybe they get recycled again into the earth realm. Um, and so my first two near death experiences were relatively peaceful, I would say, but my most recent one, it felt like I was like stuck in this hell realm for essentially eternity. And
Hmm. It's a long time.
yeah, it was quite a long time. And interestingly, like almost all of the ancient, I mean, not necessarily that ancient, but like a lot of the writings of hell described in like maybe the 1400s or the early ages or whatever, that's almost always seems to be one of the like qualities of hell is that it's eternal. It's like it's not like you're just there for vacation and then you get like shot back up to earth. It's like one of the qualities of hell is that it's like you're fucking there forever. So
Hmm.
going through my own experience, it was interesting to really like vibe with that feeling of being stuck there forever. Um, and yeah, I don't know how deep you will feel it out in order to go into that. Um, I almost want to like give people a disclaimer before I like really go in if we do go there.
Hmm.
But Tessa said my partner said that he used to be very fearful of death, and now when he thinks of it, he thinks of Ram Dass. Nice.
Hmm.
Yeah, Ram Dass is definitely a great a great being, and I know he's got a lot of good things to say about life and death. But
Hmm.
yeah, how about you? What comes to mind when you think of death?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And I think all what comes up for me is also to share my first experience of someone else very close to me passing and transitioning, which was one of my very best friends. His name was Max. He was kind of he brought me into my first real spiritual community right after I graduated college in 2012. I met him that summer and then knew him for a couple of years. And he had a community he'd created called Project U here in Phoenix. And he was kind of the cornerstone of like, he was like a super connector. Like he knew everybody. He brought everybody together. And, you know, in 2014, he ended up having a hiking accident down in Brazil. And he unfortunately passed on. And it was a very intense experience. Actually, Michael, who introduced us, was also close with him as well. And he was at the Conference for Men that Michael first put on. And so Max introduced me to Michael, actually. So that's just kind of another connection. Yo, what up, Garrett? Good to see you, brother. Thanks for being here. We just did a 20-minute freestyle flow. You'll probably appreciate going back and watching that in a sec. But yeah, so Max, you know, when I was 24, he passed. He was one of my absolute closest friends out of anyone I think I spent the most time around in the last 3 months of his life. And, you know, I oscillated between just like extreme grief and just like sobbing and just like disbelief that could happen, like such a bright light being could be taken from this world. And then I oscillate between that and just completely shutting down, being completely numbed out, no sensation. And it was interesting too, because, you know, on kind of the note that you were talking about of, you know, what happens afterwards, part of me actually, interestingly enough, and I haven't shared this with too many people, but, you know, I actually felt it coming before it happened. Like when it happened, half of me was in disbelief and the other half, like, expected it in a way. I don't know, it's hard to like fully describe, but it's like some deeper part of me could like feel the shift happening. And it's almost like he was no longer a resonant match for this specific material reality. Like he was so connected to the beyond that I think that, you know, perhaps he came here to do his mission and then, you know, he was needed elsewhere or became a better match for him to be elsewhere. And one of the best analogies that's helped me to find peace with death is it's almost like, you know, if you're working for a company, right, and everybody there, like that's your whole reality, but then, you know, you get offered a job somewhere else and you leave. It's like, for all intents and purposes, you're gone from that reality and now you're in a different one. And so on the one hand, it was really sad that he wasn't here anymore, yet even through his transition, I could feel him all the way through and afterwards, and I still do, and have had several confirmations in a couple very specific ways, like communications directly from him that he's doing just fine, he's on to his next adventure, he's just in another dimension, and it's all good. Like, don't feel bad, don't like get too weighed down with what happened, because he's doing well, and the best I can do to honor him is literally to live my life to its fullest, or live my life to the max, which was his personal motto that a lot of us took on. And so it's like, I can speak in great joy now about my friend Max, because he had such a positive influence and made so many waves while his short time was here on this planet. And I know that he's continuing to do that. And it wasn't that he was a perfect human being like anyone. He had his flaws, he had his darkness, he had his struggles that a lot of people didn't see, just like I do, just like we all do. But he was just such a full out human that it really, I think, helped me to make peace with it. Because I'm like, he wouldn't just randomly be gone, you know. It's like he was just transitioned to another realm to still be up. I feel like he's still right here. He's still a part of this thing. And, you know, he's just in another dimension that we can't see or hear with our typical senses. Just like, you know, radio waves, you can't see them, you can't hear them, but they're there. Like, there's so many invisible forces that are a part of this world that affect it, and yet we can't see it with our typical senses that we have. So that's kind of more how I view death now, is it's more of a transition. It's just like turning into a different form, just like all life turns into different forms at some point. And, you know, that along with, you know, a lot of medicine experiences and a few of my own NDEs has me actually feel I'm pretty at peace with death. And I see it just as a part of life and something that happens on a daily basis. Like death happens all the time in small ways. Like pieces of myself are constantly dying and being reborn and transforming into different ways. So that's kind of more where I fall on the side of things now. And looks like Tessa says, wow, I have that sense about someone in my community who just passed. Beautiful. That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, they vibrate on a different level, but they're still here. Yeah, 100%. Like I had heard people talk about that before, but then as I went through that process and even the years following that, it just landed even deeper, like how true that is for me, how real that is for me, because I don't assume to know what death is or what it is for somebody else, but at least in my experience, that seems more true than, oh, life just ends and they're just gone. It seems more likely to me that they just go into a different form, but that essence still exists in some way and perhaps will be born again, or, is just now on a different journey that I don't fully understand. But yeah, I would love to hear kind of what else is coming up for you. And yeah, I guess just as a disclaimer at this point, we may go a little bit deeper. So I guess trigger warning, if you don't want to hear about near-death experiences, you probably should have clicked on this anyways. But I do want to open the space to go a little bit deeper and maybe talk on certain lines that maybe we don't often hear about. Like I'm willing to do that, and I feel grounded and good about that if you do.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. Um, well, one thought that often goes through my mind, because I just like to entertain lots of possibilities, and it seems very logical to me that if our souls are on this journey of learning and growing, that it would totally make sense that they would come into a certain body and live a certain life, and then they would go to some other place, and then they would come back in a totally different experience, and you get to learn all these different things as you take on these different, like, avatar suits, basically. And there's many cultures on this planet that literally have that as like a fact of life. It's like, oh yeah, of
Mm.
course, like there's zero doubt in their mind. And like I watched this film that I highly recommend. It's called the 12 film, and they interview like 12 different indigenous elders from many different cultures.
Mm.
And this one guy from Africa, like this elder kind of shaman guy, he's just like, clear as day, like, oh yeah, all these people are so afraid of death, like you're just gonna die and come right back, like no big deal. you know and that model definitely resonates with me, because um it just seems logical. But where my mind gets a little, likes to philosophize, like, okay, well, how is it that the soul comes back? Like, say my bro Johnny died 2 weeks ago. Like, is his soul scheduled to come into a baby that's gonna be born in like 3 weeks, or like 10 years? Like, how soon is he gonna come
Mm.
back? And if he is scheduled to jump into a new baby body within like 2 weeks, then like how is it that I also feel like I can communicate with his soul in this ethereal realm or whatever? Like, obviously this universe is fucking vast and very mysterious, but my mind just gets a little bit like, how does this shit work, um, because yeah, it's just a thought that goes through my mind. Do you have anything on that?
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, first I'll say in terms of like reincarnation, it seems pretty unlikely to me that there isn't something like that going on. It seems way less likely that we just die and it's done and it's over.
Hmm.
Like, seems way more likely, and I have more and more experiences that confirm that for me. Um,
Yeah.
I don't have too much real direct experience with past lives yet. I feel like I'm getting more information lately. Like
Hmm.
I'm getting pretty certain that I was some type of medicine man, probably specifically an ayahuasca shaman in a past life.
Hmm.
But yeah, don't have any direct memories yet. But I'm more and more getting in tune. I've had little glimpses of like kind of who I've been in previous lives, at least the energetic of who I was kind of over the ages. And I've been born on this planet, I believe, a few times at least, and others as well, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would say that for me, um, I think it's interesting hearing people speak, not in a way where, like you were mentioning earlier, of like, oh, like I'm so certain this is how it is, and like there's kind of like a defensiveness to that, or like I'm needing to prove something, which is
Yeah.
interesting, feeling that energy. But then the other one you just described, I experienced as like, oh yeah, like that's how it is, and like it's like that's just how it is. But there's not anything to defend. It's like ultimately you can decide
Yeah.
for yourself. But in my experience, without, it's like the truth doesn't need to be defended, is really what's coming up
Mhm.
for me. And I
Yeah.
love connecting with others and hearing them speak in such a way that it's very matter of fact, but it's also very like open and light and
Yeah.
expansive. And I think Michael, who connected us, he very much speaks in that way a lot of the times,
Yeah.
and other people in my life too. And I really appreciate people who kind of pair this certainty with also a deep humility, where there's always like kind of this room I can feel for like, and like there's more, and what do I really
Yeah.
know? And like, it's like I really appreciate that energetic when I get to experience that in others as well as in myself. And that's actually one of the ways I can notice, what's true for me is when I'm coming to a realization and there's no need to defend it. I'm just like, oh yeah, like that makes sense. Or like, oh yeah, that's my experience. And, there's more, and I'm willing to expand or shift or grow. But this
Yeah.
feels solid for now, and it feels useful to, the more I lean on this belief, the more rooted I become, the more solid and centered I feel.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, one of the tools that I heard from Teal Swan, who's a
Mm-hmm.
pretty famous spiritual teacher, she just says like, ask yourself, is this useful? Like, is this belief or is this habit, like, is it working for me? Is it generating positive results? And if it is, then maybe keep it in your repertoire. But if it's not, then um, maybe let it go, or try and shift it. And I like that framework. Um, and yeah, I mean, it boggles my mind, the whole like, because I mean everything in nature is cyclical. It's all these cycles and loops and swirls and rainbows and circles. Everything's, as Alan Watts says, nature is wiggly. Um, but like
I
the
hadn't heard that one before. I like that.
yeah, Alan Watts cracks me up. But like a lot of civilization, as you can see with these walls, it's all these right angles, very linear, boxes and everything. And so it seems to me that if you would want to control a population, uh, and you would want them to feel afraid of, you'd want them to have this level of fear. I mean, if people are in fear, they're easier to be controlled. And so if you convince them that this is their only life, and when you get out of this life, you either get sent to the good place or you get sent to the bad place. So you have to follow certain rules,
Mm.
or you're going to get sent to A or B. And if there was more of this model of like, hey, like this is the Earth school and you're just going to get recycled. I mean, obviously it seems intuitive to be a good person because we're all interconnected, but to me, like the whole framework of primarily like Christianity, you have to get into heaven, this and this, it seems to me like it's kind of a framework that is disempowering. I mean, you could argue that, okay, maybe this is my one life, so I'm going to like live it to the absolute fullest, which I think is a decent philosophy, like live it to the max, as you said with your friend. Because, I mean, even if we are eternal souls going around, there's never going to be another Kevin May. There's never going to be another Nathan.
Hmm.
So we might as well, do it up. But I think there is a level of of relaxation that happens when if you subscribe to the like eternal soul thing. It's like, okay, maybe I don't have to like maybe I don't have to hustle so much. Maybe I don't have to worry so much because like it's all good. Like
Mm,
I have a song that it's in development called uh, basically the hook is the good news is that the journey is infinite. And
mm,
to me that just it feels good. Um, and
mm.
yeah, that's my thought on that.
Yeah. Yeah, where I want to go next off of that is, well, two places. One, the first place I want to go is a brief visit to the philosophy of YOLO and its alternative.
Mhm.
This is how I want to name
Yeah,
it. And
it's
then
called I call it Yolf.
YOLO.
You only live forever.
Dude, that's so good. I'm totally gonna use that. YOLF.
Yeah,
Just sounds funny too.
doesn't quite have the same ring to it in a rap song. Yolf.
YOLF. YOLF. Oh, that's dope.
Yeah,
I could see it. Uh,
yeah,
so that's one place I want to go, and then the other one I would love to do, at least for me, and you're welcome to do this or something else, is I would love to dive into one of my specific NDEs because I know we both
yeah.
have several that we've experienced in this life, um, and just like kind of like unpack it and peel back the layers and just like talk about what it means to me and what that experience was for me, perhaps like
Yeah,
what led up to that, the best that I know, what that experience was like in the moment, and then also what how that affected me moving forward.
yeah,
So
sure.
that's kind of the second place I love to go. So in terms of the philosophy of YOLO slash YOLF, God damn, that's so good. Uh, what I want to say around that is it's interesting because I can almost see like there's, and this is true of all of life, I believe, is everything is up to someone's interpretation and everything is relevant to how someone experiences it. It's like even though there's a religion and a set of beliefs, each person interprets that in a different way. Um, oh shit, mind stop for a moment. Hopefully,
I
am
just
I back?
needed. I checked my battery, and I think I disappeared for a second.
Yeah, it froze for a sec, but we're back, so we're good.
All right, cool. Cool. I got plenty of
uh,
battery, so we're good.
cool, right on. Um, yeah, so everyone interprets it in their way, even if it's, I think it's interesting. I'll say interesting is probably the least judgmental way I can describe it, when people are so adamant that this is God's word. Like, have you read the Bible? Do you believe in God's word or not? Do you believe in Jesus Christ and what he said or not? And I think that's interesting because I have no idea what they mean by that. Like
Yeah,
literally no clue what you're talking about because it's open to millions, billions of interpretations. Reading those
yeah,
words you're running through all of your filters and experiences and traumas and healings and maybe even past life and ancestral. Like there's so much that we're running everything we hear or read through that it's impossible for me to know what they mean by that. It's like, what is God?
yeah,
Who is God? Like, it just opens up infinite questions for me, and it's not useful to me. Like, it's
yeah,
not like I can't play that game anymore. I can't converge. I can't conversate in that context because it just
yeah,
has dissolved way too much for me at this point. So, what I want to say is on kind of two extremes of the YOLO. One is if you subscribe to YOLO, um, you can live life way too safe because you only live
yeah,
once. This is your one shot. So like
yeah,
don't be too risky. Like you should try to stick with the rules as best you were taught them, the best that you know them, wherever you were born and what you were born into. Like you should try to stay to that as much as possible. And that's how I lived like my a lot of my growing up years. I was very by the book. I'm like, if I'm in this belief system and I say that I believe this, I was born and raised Catholic. I actually thought I was going to
mhm,
become a Catholic priest. That was one of my top life career path choices that I thought I might get into, which was interesting until about middle school, high school. That philosophy started to break down a bit. I started learning that everybody around me was actually not following the doctrines as they were written, or as I interpret them at least. And then eventually there were so many contradictions and holes that it just didn't feel solid for me anymore. So that kind of safety philosophy of like, I only live once, I better not, like, it's tied to being a sinner, and like you don't want to fuck up too bad, even though you can get forgiveness, like you shouldn't commit sins. Like it's a whole interesting thing, that kind of, to me at this point, doesn't make sense. Like I understand the intentions behind it. I think that all philosophies generally have good intentions, but we have
Mhm.
to look at the results, and when we implement them, what are the effects of that? Now, kind of the other
Yeah.
extreme of YOLO is you just go wild, run it till the wheels fall off. You don't give a fuck about anybody else. I'm going to make as much money as possible, fuck as much bitches as possible, like whatever it is, it's like I'm going to like build the biggest business and try to destroy and kill and conquer. Like that also comes from the YOLO philosophy, because who cares? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It doesn't, like, we all just get a
Mhm.
reset. And so that's interesting
Yeah.
as well. And to,
Yeah.
kind of encapsulate all of that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, is,
Mhm.
where do those ultimately lead us? And what is the ultimate
Mhm.
goal of life? And how can I, let's say, even like, how can I personally have the most expansive, interesting, like worthwhile existence possible? And I think that
Mhm.
neither one leads me there by following too safety or too extreme and risky, and that's, I think, where
Mhm.
YALF comes in. And I think there's a very interesting quality that, when properly related with, can help us to converge on a really interesting new possibility that is not going to be achieved on either extreme. So just with that, would love to hear what's coming up for you around that.
Yeah, thank you for laying out that dichotomy, and maybe it's even a trichotomy. Um, so yeah, I think that, yeah, both of those philosophies are pretty common in my experience. I mean, I see a lot of people that kind of are on one of those extremes, and I think that I am maybe somewhere in the middle, in just the way I live my life. And the model that resonates for me, maybe it's totally imaginary, but it's uh, it's basically that, yeah, our souls do come back. Um, so in a sense, I don't want, and I guess it's largely influenced by this essay called "The Egg" by Andy Weir. Have you read that?
I
You
don't
have
think
read that?
so. Mm-mm. No.
Oh, you have? Okay. I highly recommend it. It's only a 10-minute read. Uh, there's also a great YouTube video that has like animation with it. So maybe I shouldn't ruin it. But the basic gist is that you should treat everyone with kindness and respect, because we are ultimately all part of the same story, essentially. And so, on the one hand, you have the people that are living life too people pleasing, and then you have the other side who just don't care about taking care of anyone except their own ego desires or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, to quote one of my friends here in Pittsburgh, who's a phenomenal visual artist, his name's Baron Batch. He says, the trick the trick is to care about everyone while not caring about what they think of you. Something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think that a lot of people hold themselves back because they're afraid of what grandpa or mom and dad are going to say, or whatever the thing is that holds them back from like living an adventurous, like, go for it life. Um, and then there's the other people that just kind of seem to treat others with disrespect, and I think that that is not a very beneficial philosophy, because I do believe that we're all interconnected, and so by treating other people in manipulative or terrible ways, I think that it will not only come back to you in a sense of maybe that sort of thing happening to you in this life or in a later life, but I think that it actually hurts you in the moment because
Mm.
it's not like the harmony of the universe in my opinion. It doesn't lead to like positive neurochemicals even, you know? Like one of my biggest arguments for living a life of loving kindness is that it just feels way better than living a life of fear and judgment. You know, like if you were, even if you were the most like
Mm.
hedonistic person, like I just want to have everything good for myself, I would say if you really boiled down that philosophy, you would end up treating everyone really good because everything would come back to you and you would have positive neurochemicals and stuff. So, yeah, that's some of my thoughts on that topic.
Mm. Yeah, I'm just gonna take a moment to breathe. This is something I
Sure, yeah, let's do it.
did on my Instagram live yesterday. Just like take a minute to really breathe and let that land.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, what I really love about what you just shared is you kind of brought up something that I think about a lot and that I'm continuing to lean more into, which is, you know, I think that at the core, first of all, I believe that at the core, all humans are, quote, good. We're all
Mm.
wanting, we're all ultimately at our core, like life bringing, life giving, life desiring. We want to feel alive. We want to feel meaning. We want to feel good, however that's defined. And now
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of complexity dropped on that when you're born into this specific reality. Yet at the core, I believe that's what's going on for all people. So that's kind of just a foundation piece. The next layer is I believe that all people are capable and have a capacity to love and care. Again, there's a lot of complexity that comes in with certain traumas, etc., and just dispositions. But ultimately, I believe there's a capacity to love, care. And I believe that actually, and that's like limiting words, right? But like we are all connected to other people that we want to take care of who also take care of us. So even if I want what's best for me, if everybody else is against me, and if I don't have some type of exchange where they want to support me in feeling better, then I'm not going to be able to. If everybody is my enemy, then I'm going to have a horrible experience and they're probably going to kill me. Right. So it's like, at least in a limited capacity, I think everybody does love in some way and wants to take care of the people around them because they understand that they will also be taken care of. It's like that flow, that energy exchange. Now, I think
Yeah.
where this often comes to a head is we have a very limited circle of who we consider family or worthy of love or our own capacity to give. We have such a limited perception of our capacity to positively
Yeah.
impact other people that, I'm going to do what I can for my family, yet I don't care about that family over there or that one over there. Like that's not
Yeah.
part of my reality. So I think that in order to live the best life possible, though, as assuming that we understand we are continuing to expand in our awareness, expand in our consciousness, and that at some level too, we are all connected. We're all like single cells in a body that is one body. If we are one,
Little.
that at the end of the day, it's like my ultimate goal is how do I take care of every cell in the body? Because as the body's health improves, so does my own. As the body's capacity to experience life to its fullest improves, so can I. So if I can figure out a way to both take care of my needs as well as more and more of the people around me, then I'm ultimately going to increase my capacity to live my life to the fullest.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that actually near-death experiences, maybe that's the one that I'll share, is that they often leave the people who've had most people that have had near-death experiences will tell you when they come back they feel like a sense of love and compassion and connection to everyone on the planet. I just want to show real quick this graphic that is in my book here.
Mm,
This is like the spheres of interaction, influence, and interconnection. So it's like you've got your personal sphere of mind, body, spirit, emotions, and then your next sphere of family, friends, close relatives, then like each one kind of ripples out. And so I think it's a helpful model to remember that we're always rippling out into these other realms, and we're also like taking in from all these other realms. And some people, I feel like, get too wrapped up in their little, they're like too obsessed with their own freaking spirituality constantly, and they're not doing really much to actually ripple out. And then other people are only ever rippling out and not taking care of their basic stuff. And
Mm.
either one can get imbalanced. And I've definitely experienced both at times. I feel like many of us have. But I just wanted to, bring up that little. And Tessa says, like a sponge squeezing out and in. Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
We're all little sponges.
Yeah, I love that. I just noticed we are coming up on an hour. I'm okay to stay a little longer. I just wanted to check in with you and see what your time is like right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. Let's do 22 more minutes.
22. I
How's
like
that?
that. That's a good number.
20, 22 is a good number. Yeah. Um,
Perfect.
so yeah, do you wanna hone in on one particular near death experience?
Yeah, I'd love to. Let me just take a moment and check in and see which one feels most resonant to share right now.
Sure.
Cool. So the one I want to share is actually the first one, the first major NDE that I had, which was back in 2013. And I shared this with you over the phone, which is when I went to
Yeah.
Burning Man. So the basic context I want to share is at that point in my life, had spent kind of the previous year really deconstructing reality as I knew it. Um, I had started doing psychedelics a couple years before that, which really opened up my world and my reality to new possibilities, new beliefs. And ultimately, what happened was I began to notice everything in my life had been, kind of built by others. It was almost like, there was definitely a piece of me that had created the reality I was in and the life that I was living. And yet so much of it was so heavily influenced by other people and the reality that they saw that they thought was best for me, and the version and identity of who they thought I was, the best that they could see. But it's like I woke up one day and it was like, looking at my house, and I was like, I see that this looks like my house, but it doesn't feel like my home. And so I started trying to deconstruct, and sift through all of the things that were mine versus other people's. And that process became so arduous, um, amplified by the fact that I was a bit naive in how I used psychedelics and plant medicines at that point, that I ultimately took more than was resonantly desirable of psychedelics, that along with the impatience of this process, that I basically got to a point of feeling like I just need to burn the whole fucking house down. Like just burn it all down and start from scratch and like rebuild the foundation of my beliefs from the ground up. And so I share that as a relevant background because when I ended up at Burning Man in 2013, I actually stayed in the camp with our mutual friend Michael, who I've mentioned a couple of times. I bought a ticket on a credit card. I didn't have the money. I didn't know anybody going. I just knew that I had to be there. Like my soul was like, you have to go. And so I just went out there on a whim, on a a vision quest. And I was very sick at that point. It was like everything that had grounded me into this world, into this reality, into my body, I had kind of, it had fallen away, had dissolved. I was like, that is not for me. I threw the baby out with the bathwater. And I had a very hard time existing in this physical world. I would, for example, drink water and 5 minutes later, pee it out. Like I felt like a skeleton. I was like very ethereal. I was like riding that edge between this world and another. And it was kind of miraculous that I didn't pass at some point. But basically, I spent most of that week just sitting in our camp because I didn't have the energy or capacity to even go out. But I think it was like the second to last day, I ended up going to the temple because I had heard stories of just, how powerful it was there, how emotional, how like people would just cry or like just feel so much being in the temple. And so I like got myself the energy to go out there, and I sat in the temple for 2 hours. And at the end of the 2 hours, I had felt absolutely nothing. I felt completely dead inside. I felt completely numb, and I felt hopeless. Like I can't even take care of my body's basic needs. And yet I want to help people. I want to serve the world. I was so clear that I was here, wanted to be here for a reason, but I couldn't even take care of my own basic needs. So I basically walked out into the deep playa, like into the deep desert. I stripped down naked. I lied down on the sand, and I said, okay, I'm done. Unless I'm here for a reason, unless I'm here to really serve humanity and live my life to the fullest, then take me now, God. And in that moment, this piercing silence shot through my ears like an arrow. And this peace just like washed over me. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't going to die. And I was genuine. It's like once that genuine intention was set, I literally was ready to go. It's like, unless I'm here for a reason, like take me now. I was ready. And life had other plans. God had other plans for me. The universe had other plans for me. So from that point on, it was a very long, arduous climb out of the hole that I had dug for myself, to rebuild the foundation anew. But I got myself back up. And from that point forward, the pieces of life started to find me that I needed to rebuild my foundation. So, that was, one of the times I felt closest to death. I literally had accepted it and I was ready for it. And I invited it in, but life had other plans. So I think it's really interesting that it wasn't me. In a way it was, and in a way it wasn't me that chose to be here still. I said, if I can live out this purpose, if I can live life in a specific certain type of way, then I'm glad to be here and would love to be here. And if not, I'm ready to go. And so I think what that did for me was really instill in me that there is this meaning to life. There is this consciousness that is somehow greater than, yet connected to myself, that is like this orchestrating force. And it's more than just, matter. Like we're more than just existing here. And that the universe isn't this like malevolent, unfair thing. Like it's actually a very understanding, yet deeply, just like deeply clear on what it is and isn't willing to be, and like how it wants to interact with us. So like I felt for the first time in that very deep way, there's like this consciousness to life that I am like communicating with and interacting with and connecting with, and that I ultimately am birthed from. It's like from, I am birthed from the earth. I am made of the materials of the earth, and I am a part of this bigger thing. I didn't just show up here on my own. Like I am part of this much bigger ecosystem that I only partially still comprehend. So that was a really intense time of my life, very confusing, very gnawing, and yet at the same time, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I actually wish that others would have a meaningful rock bottom experience like that, if that would serve their highest good and the highest good of all. And that's ultimately what that experience was for me, was that it, in my willingness to stop grasping and pretending that I have control over my life, or that I'm the one that needs to figure this all out, I can actually open up to this much greater capacity. And some people talk about that humans are almost like more like receivers, or almost like radio, like antennas. And I really get that on a deeper level after an experience like that. And it really instilled this deep sense of purpose and in deep reverence and deep humility, that I still get caught up in my human limited ego from time to time. And, you know, I struggle with that like anyone else, yet I feel I have some type of gift or advantage now because I have been so deeply tapped into that, like, on a deep level, I know I wouldn't be here unless I was here to serve in a great way and to live my life in a way that is totally fulfilling as I figure it out more and more, as life works with me to figure it out. You know, that's why I'm here, and I wouldn't want anything less. So I think that's kind of how I'll close that off, is an experience like that really helped me to dedicate myself on a deep, deep level, that I am here to live a life that has not been lived before. I'm here to experience the joys and the intensities of life in a way that has not been experienced before, that I haven't experienced even in previous lives. And I'm here to not settle, like in the long run, to not settle for the limitations of what most people still believe the human experience can be. Like, I'm here to supersede those. I'm there to evolve beyond them and expand my context of what's possible. And that philosophy at its core really informs every area of my life. It affects how I show up in business. It affects how I show up in relationships. It affects how I show up with my health and my physical practices. It really informs on a deep level that, you know, I believe life can be so much more than my limited mind thought it could be before that experience and most of my life growing up to that point. So with that, would love to hear if you have any reflections, and also would love to hear if you have your own experience that you want to share.
All right, thank you, brother, for sharing all that. Yeah, I can totally feel all the medicine within that whole experience and relate to it so much, because I've been through many similar things. And for those of you watching, like, we chatted for about an hour a few days ago and realized all these synchronicities. Like, I was at Burning Man that same time, 2013, and I had pretty much a near-death experience at that exact same fucking time. Like, how crazy is that? Like, my appendix burst on Thursday approximately of that week, and I was in total hell from Thursday through, it was Sunday that I actually got to, I think it was actually Monday, so it was like almost 5 days before I got to a hospital. But I think I left the playa on Saturday, the day that you had that experience. But yeah, one thing that comes to mind is just, so I've studied with some native elders. Tessa's saying 2013 was a very potent for her too. Yeah, I mean, it's wild how we've all been through these stages and phases, and they often overlap. So yeah, I was just saying, like, I studied in 2010 with some native Anishinaabe elders up in Minnesota. Those are the people that, you know, were there before the white people came. And they talk about a vision quest, and you do 4 days without food or water, and they say that you have to empty yourself out in order to be filled with spirit. And that's what really struck me in your whole experience, is like, you stripped down every, like, societally conditioned fucking computer program, and we're just like, all right, God, like, I'm here, I'm fucking bare, you know, I'm humbling myself, and that's a very powerful thing to experience. And I feel that many people, we have this armor, these built up armors around us at all times, and it actually holds people from living fully, because they've built up these walls that have actually disconnected them from that, like, piercing energy of spirit. And, you know, a lot of people say that Western culture is sick because we've severed our connection with spirit. As a society, we've only focused on the material world, but we're totally missing out on this spiritual connection. and that feels very accurate to me. And so I feel like those of us who have reestablished some sort of spiritual connection, it often comes from dissolving the armor, dissolving our ego stories of who we think we are, and being like, who am I, like, underneath all my possessions and all my relationships? Like, who am I if I'm just naked in the desert, you know? So that's just some reflections on that.
Mm.
Um,
Thank you for those, brother.
yeah,
Powerful.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Um, let's see, what do I want to talk about? I mean, part of me wants to dive into my fucking crazy one that just happened, but that's like a pretty long story. And I actually did make a YouTube video that's about 25 minutes long where I go deep into that story. I don't think I don't know. I'm teetering on the fence because I've only that video is the only video that I have publicly telling that story besides a few
Mm.
Facebook posts. I haven't done like a interactive interview. Interestingly, I'm going on another podcast on Monday where she specifically wants me to tell that
Mm.
story. So
Maybe,
maybe I'll save it. But
maybe round two we can go into that because I saved kind
yeah,
of my more intense one as well, hoping that we could
yeah,
do a
okay.
round two at some point. So,
Yeah, I'm down for that. Yeah, just a disclaimer for people, or I mean a brief thing for people. Like, as I said earlier, like my first two near-death experiences were relatively peaceful, but this most recent one was just like absolutely terrifying and fucking shook me beyond my core that I even thought was possible. And like it was almost 3 years ago now, and still to this day I'm like shocked that I fucking made it through that shit. Um, and if you
I
do want
feel
to hear the
that.
story, yeah, it's on my YouTube channel, which is Kevin May and Sacred Story Weavers, which is my like company slash brand is Sacred Story Weavers. Um, and yeah, it was quite a journey. But what I will share is that when I so in 2010 I rode my bike across America with a group of people, and that was one of the greatest adventures of my life. One of the greatest like
Mm.
YOLO YOLF moments of like my parents wanted me to stay in college. I was like, fuck that, I'm going on an adventure. Um, so yeah, me and my friends literally rode our bicycles from the East Coast to the West Coast, and I say we did it on peanut butter and jelly power. So I'm still pretty amazed that we accomplished that, and our goal was to make it to San Francisco, and sure enough, we made it 99% of the way to San Francisco. We're biking down the one highway, which is the coastal highway there, and interesting little thing is like in the morning before we left, we were staying at this like food co-op's food pantry. We just like met random people and they would let us stay in random places. So we were staying in literally a food co-op's like warehouse, full of like there was like 10-gallon buckets of like organic M&Ms, and I'm pretty sure they're called like sunbows or something. I forget what it is, but my friends had like a really petty argument that morning. Like five of us were riding together and they were like just stupidly arguing about these Skittles or rainbow things, and it was like really petty, but they were like mad at each other because of it. And then like 2 hours later, cruising along the highway, we're wearing like bright yellow jackets, mind you. Um, I'm just like beatboxing, doing my thing while I'm riding, because I didn't have an iPod with me or anything, but I would just like beatbox and play
Mm.
around while I was biking. Um, and then out of nowhere, I got whacked by a car going 55 or 60 miles an hour, and we strapped Tidy Cat kitty litter buckets to our bicycles to hold all of our gear. And so the car hit my back left kitty litter bucket and it exploded, and I fell off my bike to the right, and my bike took the brunt of the impact and landed like 60 feet away from where I was. And I hit the ground really hard. It turned out my helmet was cracked open, but my helmet probably saved my life. But I hit the ground and I was just like, holy shit, like I'm dead. Yo, my homie Max Schlemmer just joined. What's up, Max? I'm telling about when I got hit by a car biking. Um, so I hit the ground and I'm just like, holy fuck, I'm dead. Like, this is the end of my life. Like, I did not see this coming at all. But I was just like, I guess this is it.